When we've been hurt or in the heat of a moment of anger or when we have a disagreement or a dispute with another, one of our first inclinations is to cut and run. To cut ourselves off, never to return. At that point, we're ready to drop it, end it, no discussion, we're done. I'm out of here. Some of our familiar phrases are, I ain't got time for this. I don't have to put up with this. Or who needs them? And another one is, you're not going to get on my last nerve. Amen. Our responses to disagreements and disputes can sometimes be overkill and can make it difficult for us to maintain what otherwise could be, and perhaps what would have been, a good friendship or a good relationship. But, we just ended it prematurely. Usually it's because we're deeply hurt, or we use it as a defensive mechanism. We remove ourselves from the situation, leaving the problem sitting there and just stewing. None of us want to subject ourselves to hurt and to pain or abuse and disappointment. Of course not. And I feel you on that one. I don't want it. Now this is my take, so don't hate. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome once again to another segment of My Take on this Thursday, June the 24th, 2021. And of course, my take, this is where I discuss various issues that relate to everyday challenges of life. We talk about anything and everything, and sometimes we talk about anybody. This is the second portion of our discussion on the value of friendships and relationships. And also I want to remind us of some topics that are coming in the near future: politics, police, and the people, fads and trends towards homosexuality, and economic security and stability, breaking the cycle of lack. And I'm looking forward to that one. Since we don't want this particular topic to become a series in itself, let's get right to the discussion of today. Amen. And it really deserves much more time and much more energy than we'll give it today. But perhaps we'll have an opportunity to address some of these issues later on down the road. So once again, thank you for being with us today. I appreciate always your prayers, and thank you for all your support. Thank you for sharing the messages. I'm really grateful for that. And I believe that we're being effective in reaching people and helping people and getting the word out that there is help, that we don't have to suffer silently, that we serve a God who is able. Amen. And I'm thankful for that. I am delighted. So thank you so much. I love seeing people doing well and with friendships and relationships and getting along well. I love that. And I really don't like seeing anyone break up or abandon their relationship or split up. That's not good. I know sometimes because of the nature of the relationship that may be necessary, or at least we may believe that it's necessary. And sometimes maybe it is in fact necessary. But I don't like seeing people allow other people or other things to come between them and ruin what was a good relationship, maybe even a wonderful relationship. When I look at social media, like Facebook and Instagram, it is such a blessing because it affords us the opportunity in some very limited way, excuse me, in a very limited way, to experience and to give us the opportunity to witness and to experience good relationships. Because when we see you having such a good time, enjoying your family, enjoying your friends, we may not be there in person to witness it, but we see it on Facebook and maybe on Instagram, I guess, and some of the other platforms. I'm not familiar with those, but that's a good thing. And that's wonderful. And I really enjoy watching people enjoy their families, enjoy each other, and doing well. And it's just wonderful how we use modern technology to connect and to communicate one with another. And although it's what we might call the next best thing to being there, of course, there's nothing like actually being there. Amen. But I'm grateful that we have these different platforms. Now, I only use YouTube and Facebook. And I'm signed up for Instagram, but just haven't figured out how to use it yet. But we'll get there eventually. But I enjoy so much when I see people on Facebook again, of course, I don't interact with people on Facebook, and I don't comment, and I don't respond to some things, but I'm always watching you, and I'm telling you, I get joy out of watching people have fun. Not everybody's on there for the right reason. We understand that. So, we just have to overlook the rest of them. But I enjoy seeing the young couples, the families, the young men enjoying their children, the young ladies enjoying their children, enjoying their man. It's a beautiful sight. Different families sharing experiences, sharing memories, and all of that. And that is really good. I love seeing friends relate to one another, and how family, again, interact with one another and enjoy each other and just enjoying themselves. That's beautiful, and I love seeing that. I really, really enjoy seeing that. I love watching, particularly the young people, young men that love their family, love their children, and young women who are doing a wonderful job in taking care of their children and raising their family. Now, I don't see it all because I just see you on Facebook, so I don't know the whole story, but I like what I'm seeing. Let me put it that way, okay? I like what I'm seeing. So that's a wonderful thing. And relationships are good. Relationships are wonderful. But I'm also keenly and painfully aware that relationships and friendships can turn on a dime. They can go south quick, fast, and in a hurry. Relationships and friendships are usually okay until there is a disagreement or something happens that challenges and puts a strain on that relationship. And what happens is, oftentimes, we don't want to maintain it. We don't want to correct it. We don't want to go through the process of restoring and rebuilding and patching up that breach in our relationship. Some of you have figured it out that relationships are worth saving. I mean, most of our relationships are worth saving, whether they're working relationships, whether they're intimate relationships, or whether they're friendships, whatever the case might be. I think most of us have discovered by now that relationships are worth saving. They're wonderful. Amen. They're worth saving. So many of you are working towards that, and you don't allow little things. And I realize now when I say little things, I really understand that for some of you, what I may see as a little thing, you see it as a big thing. And I feel you. I understand that. But when you look at it within the scope of the larger picture, I mean, come on now, it really doesn't matter. We can get through this. We can work through this one. We can get over this one. I mean, if we just give it a little work, a little attention, and a little patience, I believe that we can work through it. And things will sometimes happen that will make you rethink your position and make you rethink that situation and ask yourself, is this really worth my time and my effort? Sometimes we ask ourselves that because sometimes we feel like, hey, it's just not worth it. Trust me, my friend. In most cases, not in every case, but in most cases, it is worth it. Amen? As much as I would like to forget, I mean, there's some things in my life that I love to forget. I'll be honest with you. I don't want to remember. I love to forget it. But I remember vividly that with me, growing up in my young adulthood, friendships and relationships were situations where I could take them or leave them. And oftentimes I left them. Just kind of in and out here and there kind of thing. Whether it was friendship, working relationships, intimate relationships, whatever the case was. I just didn't put that much stock, if you will, in relationships or in friendships. I've always had a special place in my heart for children and for elderly people, so I could kind of deal with that. And I saw the importance of that, and I felt the value of that. But outside of that, just wasn't a whole lot of love going on there. And I'm glad that God I'm going to say has, but I'm also going to say is delivering me from that. Amen? Because we're all still under construction. And as I thought about it, I said, well, maybe somebody should have introduced me to that song earlier that says, I need you, you need me. Because my song was more like, who needs you, who wants you? Simply put, I didn't understand the true nature of relationships. I had no respect for friendships and relationships. I had no respect for the people that made up those relationships. I didn't understand the value. In short, I didn't value and I did not appreciate relationships. And therefore, I missed out on a lot of good relationships. I ruined some good relationships. Amen. And of course, when you don't value relationships, when you don't appreciate relationships, you know what all that leads to? Well, it led to abuse. It led to manipulation. It led to exploitation. Not to mention the multiple relationships that left people's precious feelings lying along the roadside of life, and that's no fun for anybody. That's no fun for anybody. And whenever we began thinking that we're all that in a bag of chips, think about this. People really don't have to talk to us. It's just like with you watching the videos and listening to me. You don't have to do this. I mean, you really don't. And I want you to know that I appreciate it, but people don't have to talk to us. Nobody have to befriend us or love us. People are not required, as we do on Facebook, they're not required to accept our friend request. And it's a blessing. You know what? It's a blessing that anyone even look our way or give us the time of day. I'm grateful. Amen. And when you understand, people don't have to do what they do for you. They don't have to respond to you the way that they do. They don't have to accept you as they do. You got to think about it, because that's a blessing when people would actually be your friend. Amen. Amen. And the more I realize that, the more I appreciate friends, the more I appreciate relationships, the more I understand the value of relationships. And I'm grateful to be able to say that I have some good friends. I really do. I have some faithful friends and some good relationships. And I'm grateful that God gave me another chance, even in relationships that have been severed, that have been damaged. And God allowed me and allowed us, whether friends or otherwise, to be able to patch up those differences and to be able to continue those relationships. Let me tell you something. A guy that I consider probably my closest friend outside family members, been friends for years, but we've been through some stuff. I mean, we've had some knockdown, drag-out situations. You know what? But we somehow made it through it. And I don't mind telling you, that was time that I was ready to say, I'm done with this. But it was a valuable relationship, and I'm glad that God led us to continue nurturing that relationship and feeding that relationship and enable us to get over some things. Amen. And I have children that they don't have to see me as they see me today, because in some cases I wasn't there for them. One of my sons and his family was at church this past Sunday, and I love them and they love me. I love all my children, my grandchildren. I love all of them. But he and his brother, and my congregation probably doesn't know this, but he and my brother, they know them, but they probably don't know this, that neither one of them ever grew up under the same roof with me. They never grew up in the house with me. They were with their mother. They never grew up with me. And there were times that I wasn't there. There were times that I probably could have done something. No, probably. There were times I could have done some things, and I didn't. There were times that I could have been there, should have been there, but I wasn't. And yet, they have been able to forgive, and they have been able to love, and I want you to know that I really appreciate that, because nobody has to do that. No, they could have said, my dad was never there for me, so we ain't thinking about him. But we have a great relationship now, and I really appreciate that, and I appreciate them, because let me tell you something. Children know when you're not doing right. I don't care how young they are. Listen, Dad, listen, Mom, they know when we're not doing right. And sometimes they have some hard feelings because we're not doing right. So I'm glad, I'm really glad that we've been able to get through that and get over that. And I suppose we're still working on it, but I'm grateful for that. And that's what you have to do in relationships. And I've determined in my spirit that, to me, relationships are much more important and much more valuable than those things that usually break us apart and tear us apart. Usually, they're quite often silly things and things that we tend to make much more important than they really are. And in many cases, let me tell you something, it really isn't that serious. And I know sometimes to you it feels like, to me it feels like it is, but really in the larger scheme of things, it really isn't that serious. It's amazing some of the things that we fall out over. And I've determined that I'm not going to allow this to be, for a situation like that to be a deal killer. We'll work through it. We'll get over it. We'll work through it. Amen. And no matter how valuable or how good relationships are, relationships and friendships are high maintenance endeavors. Let me tell you something, friend. There are going to be challenges to your relationships. There are going to be threats to your relationships. So you might as well get ready. They're high maintenance. You got to work at it. You got to maintain it. You got to patch things up as you go along. I mean, it takes commitment. It takes work and hard work and sustained work. It's not like I can work on it today and we're good to go for the rest of our lives. Absolutely not. It takes patience. Amen. Relationships are not trouble-free. Never have been and never will be. They can be challenging and often difficult to maintain, but are usually worth the effort. Amen. Amen. Let me tell you something else about relationships. They're risky. Anytime you trust people with your feelings, with your resources, or whatever level of trust it may be, you are taking a risk. And to whatever extent possible, know what you're getting into. Know what you're getting yourself into before you get into that relationship. Amen? Because here's what I've discovered. In most cases now, the only relationships that seem to go, without a hitch. The only relationships that seem to go off without a hitch, no problem, you're able to make it through it all right and all that. Seemingly, they are successful, but they really are not. And those are just two things that I believe the kind of relationship that seem to go off without a hitch, seem to be successful relationships, but they really aren't. And those are long distance relationships and one-sided relationships. Amen. When you have one side, one person just goes along and another person gets their way, it may seem like you're being successful. Well, we've been married now for 45 years, and it may be because, it's a one-sided relationship. One person just giving in totally and the other one just taking over totally. It may be because it is a long-distance relationship. Amen? So those two make it seem like we're doing well, we're being successful, but that's not really always the case. As a matter of fact, most of the time that's not the case. That's not the case. Those type of relationships have their own set of problems and their own set of challenges. And sooner or later we have to deal with them. In the commercial world, there's such a thing as truth in advertising. And basically what that means is, whatever you advertise something as being and being able to do or being able to perform, it has to do that. It has to be that. And when it comes to relationships, I want to suggest something very similar. That is truth in advertising. Be honest with people. Be honest with people and be what you claim to be. Be who you are. Be honest with people. Let them know who you are and what you are. Then let them decide whether they want to be a part of that relationship or not. I don't believe in telling everything. I don't believe in telling all. And I know some people, when they counsel, when they give advice, they say, well, y'all just sit down and talk about it, and each one of you just spill your guts and tell everything you've always done and tell everybody you've always been with. No. You don't tell everything. You don't tell everything. You want to ruin a good relationship in a hurry? Tell everything. No, you don't do that. Amen. But what you do is this. If it is something that could potentially come up later, if it could have an impact, a negative impact on your relationship, yes, you need to put it on the table right now. If it's relevant, put it on the table right now. But if it's not, if it has no bearing on now or the future, forget it, man. Listen, forget it, sweetheart. Let's just move on, okay? That's a good thing. That's my take. Okay, let me go there today. That's my take. All right, but you do what you want to do. But I'm just telling you, I don't think it's a good idea to tell everything. When I counsel people in marriage, I tell them absolutely not. Don't sit down and tell. You don't have to tell everything, because some of y'all can get pretty graphic. I mean, some of you act like you love going into detail. And I'll be honest with you, if I was in that kind of position, I ain't really trying to hear it. I don't need to hear, how many men you've been. I don't need to hear all that. If it's not relevant, if it's not likely to come up and impact our relationship later, let's just forget it. And maybe one of the reasons I don't want you to tell all is because I don't want to tell all. Okay, I don't think it's a good idea. All right? But whatever you tell, let it be the truth. That's my point right there. Whatever you tell, let it be the truth. Be honest. Amen. And whatever you portray yourself to be, let it be real. Whatever you portray the situation as being, let it be real. Be honest. Because listen, my friends, honesty, respect, and trust are essential to having quality, wholesome, healthy, and long-term relationships. Dishonesty, betrayal can sabotage any future potential and possibility for a good relationship or for a good friendship. And it can hurt everybody involved, not just the perpetrator. I mean, it can hurt everybody. When we have been mistreated and betrayed by one, it can stain our view of all people, and we tend to paint everybody with the same brush. Don't do that. And we say things like, well, men are just no good. Men are no good. And then the brothers out there saying all women are deceitful and conniving, and some of us may have some issues, but not everybody. Nothing can be further from the truth. And it's wrong for us to take what someone else has done to us and punish somebody else for it. We can't punish ourselves, and we can't punish other people because of what one person has done to us. Amen. Listen, give yourself an opportunity to heal and give others the benefit of the doubt. Don't reject their kindness because of your past painful experiences. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Because there are far too many people who have been hurt and they're still feeling the sting. And I understand that. They're still feeling the pain. And they're grumpy and hateful sometimes and angry, seems like, at the world because of what they're going through. But listen, baby, I didn't do it. Trust me, it wasn't me. So don't be treating me like that. And sometimes we're denying ourselves some beautiful, wonderful relationships because we're still stuck back there on somebody who did us wrong. Stop singing your somebody done me wrong song, okay? Let's get over it. Let's move on because God has better things for you. Amen. Amen. Listen to me, my friend. When you look at relationships, if you want a good relationship, if you want a quality relationship, it requires sincere concern for the other person or persons. Listen, and it requires concern and care for the relationship itself. In friendships and relationships, there are feelings involved, sensitive and fragile feelings. So care must be taken to protect those feelings, theirs as well as ours. Amen. Listen, it helps us to know those things that are threats to our relationships. It helps us to know those things that pose a danger to our relationships. If we know, then we can have the opportunity. It gives us the opportunity to guard ourselves against those things, to protect ourselves, to protect our relationships against those things. Amen. And we have to understand that there are some enemies to our relationships. There are some enemies. Sometimes those enemies are people, unfortunately. There are some enemies to our relationships. And it's not always people, but sometimes it can be people because there are people who don't want you to be in certain relationships. Sometimes people are envious and jealous and hateful and mean and spiteful. I know you don't know anybody like that, but I know a few. But that sometimes get enemies to your relationship. They don't want you to do well. They don't like to see you doing well. But there are some other things that are enemies to our relationships that we allow ourselves. Some of them are impatience. Terrible. You got to be patient. Dishonesty. You ought to be honest. Refusal or failure to forgive. Listen, we're going to need forgiveness. You are, I am, all of us. Amen. Those are enemies to good relationships. Misunderstandings that we make no attempt to understand. Self-centeredness, selfishness, and that's just to name a few. These are enemies of relationships that we need to be aware of and guard ourselves against, okay? Some of the keys to establishing and maintaining good, wholesome, and healthy relationships and friendships are respect for one another, respect for each other's views, being sensitive to the feelings of others, and that we understand that we don't have to become enemies or hate each other or divide because we disagree. Come on now, we can get through this. We can get through this. Come on, look at me and tell me. Say, come on, say, Pastor, we can get through this. Come on, tell me that. We can. Yeah. Well, listen to me then. We can get through this. Okay. I know it may seem serious, but it's not that serious. Relationship is most important. Okay, for us to have some good, wholesome, healthy relationships. But the respect has to be there. We have to respect one another. We have to respect each other's feelings. We have to be sensitive to each other's feelings and not just carelessly and callously hurt each other and harm each other. That's not good. That's not good for anybody. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Disagreements, listen, don't have to be a deal breaker. We don't have to break up because we disagree. We can work through this thing. We can get over it. But you must value that relationship enough to work on it and to work through it. Work on the relationship. Work through those issues that threaten that relationship. And remember, with every bad experience, there are some good lessons to be learned. With every bad experience, there's still some good lessons to be learned. Every bad experience can be good if we learn from them, if we learn from it. But no lesson is of any good to us unless we learn that lesson. Or you hear what I'm saying? We need friendships. We need relationships. Why do we need them? You say, well, I don't need anybody. Yes, you do. I don't need to be around. Oh, yes, you do. You need somebody. You need somebody. Relationships, listen, we need relationships. They are important because we were never designed to be alone or to operate alone. That's why there's so many people in the world. That's why God surrounded us with so many people. We need each other. We feed off each other, if you will. We help each other. We encourage each other. We're there to provide for one another. We need each other. Again, God designed it that way. We cannot make it by ourselves. I guarantee you, if there's somebody out there, you're trying to make it by yourself, you just pushed off everybody and you think you don't need anybody, I guarantee you, you are one miserable, if not miserable, one boring individual. and you may be a miserable, boring individual. Amen. We need each other. We need relationships. Listen, establishing wholesome, healthy relationships require discernment, and they require a discriminating taste, if you will. You don't open your life to just anything or anybody. No, that's not a good idea. You're not out there just for anything and everything and anybody and everybody. Oh, no. No. You've got to be selective, if you will. You have to be discriminating. You have to have a sense of discernment to know whether this is good for me or whether this is not going to be good for me. Okay? So you have to be able to discern that because when you think about relationships, think about it this way. If somebody were to come and visit your home, and you know how it is with people when they come and visit, I don't think there's any of us that regardless of who comes to the door, we allow them in our homes and we tell them, well, just, walk around and just make yourself at home and do whatever you want to do. No, we don't do that. There are some people, listen, and it's the same way in relationships. There are some people that need to be left, they shouldn't even be allowed on the porch. They should be left out there in the yard somewhere. Holler at them through the window, through the door. There are some people just need to be left out there in the yard. They don't even need to be on the porch. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And some of y'all, you know what I'm talking about because you've allowed somebody on the porch and somebody at the door and somebody inside the door, somebody in the living room and somebody in another room. And what you're saying right now is, man, I should have left him out there in the yard. There are some people, you got to leave them out there in the yard. You got to be discriminating. You got to have a sense of discernment. There's some that needs to be left in the yard. Some others you might allow on the porch. Some others you might allow at the door, and we'll just talk at the door, kind of thing. And then there are others that you will allow, and sometimes if, some come to the door enough or come to the porch enough, you may build that relationship. Oh, well, come on in the house and have a seat right here on the couch in the living room, and as you build those friendships, those relationships, those working relationships, whatever they may be, then you let people a little bit closer in. But you have to take care, patience, discernment, and have that sense of discrimination. In a good sense, I mean that, where you are selective in the people that you allow in your space. That you're selective in the people that you allow in your life. Are you hearing what I'm saying? So some can be, and then, there are others that may be allowed the run of the house, if you will, access to other rooms because we got it like that. Amen? Because we got it like that. That's just the way we are. But usually, let me tell you something, and I think most of us understand that. Usually when people tell you they bring you in the house, and I'm amazed at how people just open up sometimes and let people they don't even know. They don't even know whether they can be trusted or not. And sometimes people say, come on in and make yourself at home. I don't think they really mean that. I don't think they mean go back there, lay down in the bed, take your shoes off, and lay down in the bed. I don't think they mean that. And you should. I hope you don't. No. Remember, some in the yard. Just stay right there. Right there. I'll see about you in just a minute. Some may be allowed on the porch. Well, come on the porch. Sit in the swing over there. Others may be allowed at the door while you talk to them through the door. And then sometimes you can allow them in a little bit closer. Okay? So if you want to have good relationships and long-term and valuable relationships, that's kind of where you have to do it. Okay? And again, others may be allowed access to other rooms or other parts of your life, other space in your life. But you have to decide who goes where, who gets where. You have to make that decision. Okay? Now, maintaining friendships and relationships is a shared experience with shared responsibilities and shared accountability. That means that depending on what level we are in the relationship, there's a certain level of shared responsibility, a certain level of shared accountability, depending on what level we are. Okay? And you sort of adjust as you go on a higher level. We're in this thing together, and therefore we must work on it together. We must work through it together. It is not left to one person in a relationship. We all who are involved got to work together and work towards maintaining that relationship or repairing that relationship or whatever the case might be. Are you hearing what I'm saying? I said, are you hearing what I'm saying? We have to work together. Okay? Now, preserving valuable friendships and relationships is important because good friends are hard to come by. Good relationships are hard to come by and difficult. Once you lose it all, in the process of losing it, it's difficult to recover, difficult to recapture. We protect them by the value we place on them and by our determination to overcome all challenges because we want to salvage that relationship. Are you hearing what I'm saying? All right. Now, it's always been my policy that you're in a better position to stay out of a situation than to get out of a situation. But sometimes relationships are ruptured. They are damaged. And we have to find a way to repair that damage. And so sometimes we didn't intend for it to get in trouble, but it did. Sometimes we didn't intend for it to go that way, but it did. So now we got to figure out a way to fix it. We got to figure out a way to mend the fences, I think the way some people put it. We got to find a way to build bridges, if you will, to fill in those gaps in our relationships. We got to figure out a way to overcome it. And you don't treat relationships like like folk used to do, treat an injured animal. You just shoot it and leave it there to die. No, you don't do that to relationships. You don't do that you don't just give up. You don't just shoot it and leave it there to die. You nurture it. You nurse it back to good health. You hear what I'm saying? You nurture it. You nurse it back to good health because it's important. It's worth saving. It's worth it. Believe me, my friend, it's worth it to have a good relationship, long-term relationship. One of the quickest and easiest ways to detect or to recognize what could be a bad relationship, what could be a bad marriage, what could be a bad working relationship, could be a bad partnership, whatever the case is. But one of the quickest ways, and the way that I explain it to people when I counsel people when it comes to, they're contemplating marriage, and one of the things that I tell them is always recognize and obey the road signs. And what I mean by that is that there are cases that as you go through life, there are some things that pop up, some behaviors, some attitudes, and some things that happen, some experiences that are really road signs that are telling you danger ahead. Some of them are telling you bridge out, don't go any further. And there are signs along the way that are telling you this is a bad deal. Don't do it. There are signs. And that's why I say obey the road signs, because what people do, because they're so caught up in the emotion of the relationship, they're excited about getting married, they've already sent the invitations out or whatever, and so they're not trying to hear the signs. The signs are glaring signs. Stop, turn around, don't do it. And we press ahead anyway. only to find out later that we made a bad choice, we made a bad decision. You know, in all my years of counseling, there may have been more, but there's one situation in particular that almost immediately, and they had already announced the wedding, already told people they were getting married. You know, that's what happens. That's why you ought to get your counseling before you make all the decisions. Too many times, people have already made up their mind that they're going to get married or they're going to enter into a business deal, whatever the case might be, before they get into counseling, before they seek some answers. And so in this situation, they had already told everybody they're getting married and all of this. Then they come to me for counseling. Well, when it comes to counseling, let me tell you what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you 3 things, all right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? You can expect that. I'm going to give you those 3 things. And almost immediately after we came out of that counseling session, they decided they were not going to get married. And I don't know if it was one individual versus the other, or if they both mutually arrived at that conclusion. I don't know, but they never got married. They never got married, And I'm not there to tell people to marry, to not marry, to get into this business deal or not to. That's not my place. The only thing that I try to do is help people to see the situation for what it is. And sometimes, and I tell people this. Unfortunately, it's reality. I said, listen, if you're in a relationship and if you got a man and he's still beating you up, and y'all still fighting and y'all still carrying on, or you still beating him up, because it could happen either way. And there you are, he's out partying the night before the wedding, or you out running the streets the night before the wedding. That's a road sign that's telling you, stop, turn around, make a U-turn. Anyway, all right, so don't ignore the road signs, okay? Because here's what's going to happen. There are going to be signs that's going to tell you either to proceed or to back off, okay? In a relationship, here's the way I like to put it. See what you see, hear what you hear, feel what you feel, experience what you experience. Obey the road signs, don't ignore it, okay? And don't allow, I mentioned this already, but don't allow past relationships to impact or carry over into present and future relationships. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't think of everybody in a negative way just because you had a negative experience with one person, okay? Or even just because you had a couple of different bad relationships. Don't conclude that all of your relationships are going to be bad. Just figure out where you're going wrong at and correct it. Because we're going to need good relationships. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Let me wrap it up with this. Harboring anger and resentment can be a relationship killer. Harboring anger, resentment can be a relationship killer. Forgiveness is an absolute necessity. If you want to kill a relationship, let that anger build up. Let that resentment build up. Let it sit there and poison your system, and you'll never have a good relationship. Not only that, you'll probably never be happy, never have any joy. You'll be miserable. You may end up being one of those, miserable, lonely, and boring individuals. Harboring anger and resentment can be a relationship killer, a friendship killer. There have been a lot of things that I've had to forgive, but there have probably been more things that I've had to be forgiven of. And if you want to keep that relationship, you want to continue that relationship, there are some things you're going to have to forgive. Get it out of your system and don't hold it there. I was talking to someone not very long ago, and they was explaining to me about another individual, another couple, way up in age, and they were describing that this was not a good relationship. Then they were describing that for years it has not been a good relationship, and they said because of one individual, of what one individual did, the other person in the relationship actually never forgave them, never really received them back, never really accepted them. They just continued to live in the same house, continue to be married. And that's why I don't mind telling you, I think that sometimes when people boast about how long they've been married, that's a good thing. But you don't ever know what's really behind that. Out of those 40 years you were married, how many were you really happy? Out of those 50, 60 years that you were married, how many of those that both of you were really happy and enjoyed each other in that relationship? And thank God that happens. There's some, and I applaud them. But there are others, we can say we've been married for a long time, and we can condemn other people because they broke up, they split up, they divorced or whatever. We can condemn them. But the truth of the matter is, for years, you've been living a lie. It's just that simple. So we can't harbor anger and resentment because it can kill a relationship. It can absolutely kill a relationship. Now, let me tell you, that's my take. Now, what do you have to say? Sound off if you can, and I know you can. God bless you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday, June the 23rd? No, not 23rd, 24th. June the 24th. Amen. And appreciate so much you being with us today. As always, we ask for your prayers, and thank you for joining us for all of our videos. For those of you who join us for a Bible study on Wednesday, my take on Thursday, and Preacher to Preacher on Friday. And we're just delighted to have all our friends and supporters on Facebook and on YouTube.